welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, and listen as we have a conversation about the mundane. One thing that we try to deliver is a conversation that is less than fascinating so that you will feel free to just drift off. Thank you for joining us. We hope you, our listener, will listen and sleep. At the very least, we hope you will listen and enjoy. I am your host, Marco Timpano, and joining me is such a dear person and someone I consider a friend, Ryan Turner. Welcome to the Insomnia Project.
Thanks so much for having me, Marco. I'm super excited to be on the Insomnia Project.
Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of the guests I have who are friends of mine are actors and comedians like yourself and myself, but we have other skills. And one of your talents right now, which is just blazing, is making belts.
Yeah, it's a very odd hobby that I've just kind of fell upon.
Mm-hmm. Tell me how. Okay, I'm just going to say this for our listeners because they're going to want to see your wares. Go to our show notes and click on Ryan's name, and it will take you to his website.
Yes.
Now that I got that business out of the way, how did you get into belts?
Well, I've always been fairly handy with my hands. And I originally took on woodworking, but not something that is very easily done in a 600 square foot condo with neighbors. So that had kind of been put on the back burner, and I had taken a trip to Mexico in January, and I was looking at all these beautiful leather goods. Just looked like it looked like a handmade personal item that was just really well done, well crafted. And living in Toronto, we're so lucky here that we have so many options, so many things to do. There's not many things that you can't do in this city. And so I Googled.
And you can speak to that because you were raised in a smaller city in Ontario, right?
Yeah.
So it's quite a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Tillsonburg, Ontario, there's not a lot going on except for corn and tobacco.
Right. For anyone who is a fan of Stompin' Tom, he has a song called Tillsonburg. My back still aches when I hear that word.
Huge hit.
A huge hit. And if you're one of our international listeners, look it up. It's a great song, and it's comedic as well. But back to being in a big city and belts.
So I got home because I was looking at these bags. I'm like, these are beautiful. And then my mind goes to, I wonder how I can make one of those as opposed to spending however many hundreds of dollars. So I got back home and I just Googled Leather Workshop Toronto.
Okay.
And the Make Den came up, which is a studio in I believe that they've moved, but they're in the Bloor West Village.
Okay.
Anyway, signed up. I took the class. I learned some basic leather working skills.
Wow.
And next thing you know, I'm watching every YouTube video under the sun on how I can learn more and perfect this craft, and just kind of got into the basic, I want to make wallets and bags, but belts was kind of the jump off point.
It's like the snake of animals when it comes to making belts.
It really is.
Leather work, I mean.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, there was a Far Side cartoon. I don't know if you know the Far Side.
I remember the Far Side,
and it's like God making animals, and he's making snakes like plasticine. He's like, oh, these are easy, right? Not to suggest that belts are easy, but it just reminds me.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's definitely the starting point of just kind of getting to know your leather and how it works and what type of moisturizers you need.
Wow.
And,
so what type of moisturizers do you need?
Well, there's so many different kinds, and I eventually just kind of went with a basic neat's foot oil.
Oh, okay.
And this is the guidance of the people at the leather store, Tandy in Mississauga, which is, obviously not the busiest store.
Sure.
It's no, Sobeys in the middle of downtown Toronto on a 5 p.m. Friday.
For our international listeners, Sobeys is a grocery chain that we have in this part of Canada.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So anyway, they are more than happy to greet you and talk to you and continue to talk to you.
It's called Neat?
The store is called...
No, the oil.
Neat's Foot.
Neat's Foot.
Yeah, Neat's Foot oil. So it's just It's not too far off even from an olive oil,
Okay.
which others have used as well for as a moisturizer for leather.
I see.
And then as well, you can use mink oil, which same things that you would protect your boots with.
Right.
But eventually, I kind of had to find the balance between a proper moisturizer and a sealant that would go with the belt as well, because...
Okay, hang on a second. So you've got the oil, and what the oil does is make the leather soft?
Yes.
And the sealant does what?
So I dye the belts.
Oh, you dye them?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me back up a step. What leather are you using?
Cow leather.
Is it a particular grade or thickness, or is all cow leather the same?
It's all different.
Okay.
So leather is graded in ounces, and that's essentially the thickness of the leather.
I see.
So, your small minimalist belt could potentially be, 2 to 4 ounces.
Okay.
Whereas a stiff leather belt is probably going to be around 8 to 10 ounces.
I see. Okay.
So it's a thicker cut of leather, obviously, because you want that sturdiness and that longevity, and that you want a belt to provide over the years.
Sure.
It does soften up over time, as all true leather will, but it should retain some of that stiffness as opposed to something that's like a bag strap or something.
So that's the leather. Then you oil it. Is that right? You use the oil on it, the neat foot oil.
Yeah.
And then you seal. Oh, when do you dye it? So you're dyeing the leather as well? You're tanning it sounds like, right? Like you're... correct me if I'm wrong. I'm
this is
stabbing in the world of leather.
Yeah. Okay. So, to really backtrack here,
okay.
I'm going to give you just a breakdown of what I've learned in the leather world, which has been exciting for me, and I'm excited that anybody else is excited to learn about the leather world.
Yeah.
So essentially, when I go to purchase some leather at Tandy, it's like a hide of leather, a big sheet. And there's 2 types that I can purchase. I can purchase vegetable tanned leather, which is what I buy.
Okay.
And that's a naturally tanned leather where they use vegetable oils and such to tan the hide that they would get from
I guess a farm or somewhere where they use cattle for food, and then they use the skins for leather.
Yeah,
is that fair to say?
Like the skins that would come, not to sound too off-putting, but the skins that would come off the cow's back essentially would go to either a vegetable, it would be vegetable tanned or chrome tanned.
Okay.
And chrome tanned is a much faster process in tanning the leather, and that would provide a softer leather. So, your furniture leather or your leather jackets would most likely be chrome tanned.
That supple, soft, luxurious feeling leather is chrome tanned.
Yes.
Okay. But the stronger, sort of sturdy, the workhorse leather is going to be vegetable tanned.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the chrome tanned is going to take a couple weeks to be able to tan one piece of leather, where the vegetable tan would take a few weeks to a month.
I see.
But the vegetable tanned, you can dye, you can stamp, so you can put in initials, or you can carve it, where the chrome tanned is kind of just once it's chrome tanned in its color, that's it, essentially. You can just sew it and whatnot. So I buy the vegetable tanned, and then I will stamp your initials into it. And then, so essentially the process that I would do is I'll buy the leather, I will cut the leather into strips, belts. I will stamp your initials, I will punch the holes in, then I will dye it to whatever color you prefer to match your day-to-day clothes or your suits, whatever you're looking for. And then I will moisturize the leather, and then I will seal it and seal in any little pieces of leather that might be kind of frayed or anything like that.
Oh, I see. So that's what it does.
I seal in the leather, and then it also seals in the dye as well. So it ends up being quite a process, but I I do really enjoy working with it and learning as I go.
Do you cut the strips into leather strips?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have just a little hand tool, and this is the nice thing about it as well, is that it's all hands-on. I don't have any machinery. There's no power tools involved. Everything is done by hand. So I have a simple hand tool that essentially you lay out your pad, your leather, your raw leather hide,
Okay.
essentially, and you use I have like a yardstick, and I will cut one end completely straight. And then you have your hand tool that you essentially set to 1.5 inches, an inch, and a blade just kind of sits in there, and there's a guide, and you just run it all the way down the hide, and it cuts you a perfect 1.5 inch strip, whatever you're looking for, and then I'll just cut the entire hide like that, set those strips aside, and then as I get my orders, I take one on at a time, essentially, because people have asked if I preset belts to kind of have them ready to go, but I do enjoy getting the order and starting it from top to bottom.
Wow. The yardstick, is it like a yardstick that you would have in school growing up? Is it that kind of a yardstick?
It's 100% that stick.
I have an extra one if you need an extra one. I have a yardstick.
Oh, really?
My sister's a teacher. Somehow I got a yardstick. I don't know. It's in my closet. I'm not putting it to use. I'm happy to give it to.
Yeah.
What is the name of your company? Turner Belts?
It's Turner. It's TRNR, which is essentially my last name. It's difficult coming up with a business name.
Sure.
I couldn't pull the trigger on a name, and my girlfriend said Turner's great.
Oh, it is great. It is great. A Turner belt? Everybody wants a Turner belt.
That's what I've heard.
All right, so remind me about the yardstick. I'll make sure you walk home with that.
I will. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Can we talk buckles?
Yeah.
All right. Controversial topic
This
right
is
now.
very controversial.
Talk to me about buckles.
Honestly, it is a controversial topic because I have yet to find a buckle supplier.
Really?
I've been even told to go to a Value Village or to just a second-hand shop and just buy cheap belts
and
for under $5 and just
repurpose the buckle. Oh, that's great.
So I know there's Alibaba and these other potential like websites overseas, but it's a minimum of 500 buckles or something along those lines, where I'm not quite at that point yet. So luckily, the leather shop that I purchased my leather from, they do have a nice array of buckles. But I would like to be able to get to a point, because this is a new business that I've dove into. One of those.
Jumped into.
I jumped into it.
First.
I really did. And
it's almost like you want a blacksmith to create Turner buckles for you. How great would that be?
That would be unbelievable. If I had... See, my girlfriend's into welding.
Really?
She just got into it.
What a perfect match.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Like it's the seed is planted, and we just need our skills essentially to grow and kind of just like a vine, almost just wrap itself around itself, I guess.
I love it. I have 2 buckles I'm going to give you as well, because I want them made into belts. So we'll talk about that later.
Oh, beautiful.
What do you look for when you're looking for a buckle? What's important to you as a leather worker who specializes currently in belts?
Well, there's 2 things that I look for right now. I mean, the 2 questions that I'm asking myself out of the gate are, is this a casual belt or is this a dress belt?
Right.
Obviously, with the dress, I'm looking for anything polished, a polished silver or polished nickel or brass. But I think for me personally, the unfinished buckle, something that's a little bit more raw, that kind of speaks to the trade that I've been working at, and just kind of me in my spare room. I feel like it's just something that has a little bit more. Even though when you receive one of my belts, it is crisp, brand new, but there is like just a subtle unfinished quality to it. Like even the dye is, you can almost see like it's not a true color. Like it kind of fades in and out. So every belt
It almost looks like it has a brush stroke through it. Like you can see the workmanship.
Yeah.
In a very clear way, if I can be so bold as to say that.
Yeah. And I like that aspect of it because every belt is unique in its own way. So,
that's your artistry coming through.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if you buy a high-end Moschino belt, it's going to look the same as every other belt that's made by that line under a certain sort of spec that they've decided or determined that their belts will look like.
Yeah.
I don't know why I picked Moschino. It's not like I own a Moschino belt. They're like $400. But a Turner belt is going to look artistic from your eyes, right? So it's going to have a rustic, sort of rugged, sort of solid kind of feel and look to it. Is that fair to say?
Very much so. There's no two belts that are going to look alike. And obviously, if you have your initials on there, then it definitely won't. But in terms of just the subtle differences, even if I buy two hides, one color will take a little bit differently than the other hide. So if I use the exact same dye, one might be a little darker, one might be a little bit lighter.
Oh, cool.
So, and then that will, I try to look for a buckle that just seems to fit perfectly with that belt. And I have about 10 different buckles that I'm working with right now, and I just sit there sometimes and try to figure out what is the best match for this purple belt or this dark brown belt or this burgundy belt.
So here's a question for you. Let's say I have my grandfather's or my great-grandfather's belt, a military belt, and it's worn, I can't really wear it. If I was to take the buckle, send it to you, and say, I want a belt with this buckle on it to honor my grandfather, my great-grandfather, whomever, would you be able to do that?
I would.
So that would be a great service. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, and I have.
Oh.
My uncle had a belt that he used. He's an engineer, and he is always he's been retired for about 15 years, and he's always in his workshop in the basement.
Right.
And he's had this one belt that and good for him, it's down at the last notch that he's had for, I want to say, I think he said 40 years.
Wow.
So the leather's still hanging on, but it's obviously in rough shape.
Sure.
So he asked me a couple weeks ago if I could do exactly that. He's like, this belt means everything to me. I want to keep the buckle. Can you make me a new belt? And 2 weeks later, I put his initials in there, and I gave him the leather. He's like, oh, I need to keep the leather too. I'll hang it up in my workshop.
Oh, great.
And he's got a brand new look on life with his belt, 40 more years at least.
So if you want the buckle memory service, or whatever you want to call it, Ryan, just go on the website and they can do that too. That's great.
I'd be happy to do that. And those projects almost make me even more excited because, there's already history within the buckle. And now that buckle can live on for, many more years to come.
So wonderful. Now, I will put a disclaimer. Maybe you don't have a buckle that will actually work with how Ryan makes his belts, or your buckle's too old and decrepit, so just be forewarned. You might not be able to do with all the belts just because I mentioned it on this podcast.
Right.
But I want to just say this. There's something so lovely and so wonderful when you get something that's handmade by a local artisan, that when you wear it, it's so special. And I just want to say, I had a tie that was made for me. And I picked the pattern, I picked how thick I wanted the tie, how long I wanted the tie. And I got this beautiful tie. It was like no other tie that I have. I'd even call it a cravat because it's that special to me. And every time I wear it, I'm in love with it. I feel special.
Yeah.
I can't help but feel that for someone to get a belt that's not something from, your local stores that sell them in mass quantities, that it wouldn't be as special.
Yeah, and that's why I really enjoy this process, because I personally love anything handcrafted. I will pay a little bit of extra money just to get and to know where your whatever it is that you purchase, you know exactly where it's coming from, and you know that you're supporting that individual or that group of people or whoever it may be. There's something extremely satisfying, and maybe it's just something primal within us that we, just maybe that almost, I don't know, just like that human quality of knowing where you're getting it, that there's a relationship there because you know exactly who you're getting it from. There's no 6 degrees of separation overseas. It came from, Walmart at the end of the day. That, it's a handoff. It
often pays for itself too, because I find when I purchase things that are handmade by artisans, local artisans in particular. For example, I bought a belt for $26 from a place like one of the box stores that you've mentioned, and it started to fray apart at the part that you put into the buckle. I don't know what that end of the thing. It frayed apart within a week of having it. And it was boy. I spent $26 for a belt that I wore maybe 3 times. I know that when you get something that's handmade by someone who makes it themselves, especially with good quality material, that thing lasts forever. I bought a pair of boots that were locally made, leather, and they were expensive. I still wear those boots to this day, and I bought them over 15 years ago. They're my winter boots. Yeah. No other boot has ever compared. And whatever I spent at that time, which I thought was a lot of money, it's more than paid for itself.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's hard at the time to sometimes put up that extra little bit of money, for something like boots or a jacket or even, a tie.
Right.
But you don't really realize it until a couple of years down the line when you look back and you can't believe that you still have this object and you still know that it was, even if it wasn't necessarily personalized, that you spent a little bit of extra money on something that is so worth its value. And every once in a while I think it's worth, especially for, those things that are, your day-to-day necessities, like having a good pair of boots, having a good jacket.
Sure.
Even having like a nice, a nice dress shirt.
Sure.
Something that fits you.
Yeah. Tailored shirts are like out of this world.
Yeah. And, or having like a belt, something that you wear every single day that's a part of you. And, you want something that's going to last just as long as you.
Oh, I love that.
That
should be your slogan.
You know what? I got a back pocket slogan.
Okay. Do you want to say it or do you want...
I think I'm going to say it.
Okay, say it.
That, because I don't have a logo that I put on the belt or anything. I've put it on my belt because I'm wearing it and I have to show off my business to a degree. But when I make your belts, I don't put any logo, I don't put any stamp that isn't approved by you.
Okay.
So I say it's not about my brand, it's about yours.
Oh, that's great.
Which I like.
I love it.
Yeah.
Sizing. If I need a belt, or if my friend or my wife needs a belt, what should we look at with regards to sizing?
Well,
do we look at how much bigger than your waistline should you be getting a belt?
Essentially, when you buy a belt, and I've made this mistake before, where I was kind of out the door, on my way out of the door, at a jean store, and I just purchased a few jeans that I just needed to do some jean shopping, essentially.
Sure.
And on my way out, this belt caught my eye, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to throw that in there too. The belt said 32 waist, perfect. Purchased it, and then got home and realized that a 32 waist belt means that it is the last notch.
Oh.
Meaning if I put on a little bit of weight, there's no more notches left. So what I do is I'll have a conversation with you as well, because some people will be like, I'm always this, and others will be, I fluctuate.
Right.
So I take that into account, but I will always have, if you want it as your waist size, I will put that as the middle notch.
I see.
So I will have 3 notches on either side. If you're a 36 waist, I will give you 3 notches either way to give you some Thanksgiving wiggle room.
Oh, I like that. How much does a notch represent? So if 36 is the middle, what's the next notch up?
Just about an inch.
An inch, so it would be 37.
Yeah.
Oh, just about. Okay, that's interesting to know.
So
these are the things you don't know until you talk to a belt maker.
And if you are, a 31 waist, there's not a lot of room to go less than that. So you don't want a whole whack of extra belts. So I obviously take that into account. So there's always about 2 or 3 notches of leeway.
Is it fun to make the notch, to press the notch through? Or what's your favorite part of making the belt?
I think my favorite part is the rivets that I put in.
Okay.
So the notches are okay. Sometimes because it's a tough leather that I do use, which is great. So there is an excitement in punching the notches, but sometimes it's hard to get that hole all the way through. Like there'll just be a little bit of leather that I have to kind of just saw away at. Just those little fibers that you just kind of stick out that you have to get rid of. But the rivets that I place on the keeper, and the keeper is essentially once you have done your belt up, you slide the excess belt into the keeper.
Oh, that's called a keeper. Okay.
And into your belt loop, essentially. So on either side of the keeper are usually 2 steel rivets that hold the end of that hold the buckle on.
Okay. Yep.
So that usually signifies also that I am near completion of this belt.
I see.
And the final touches are just putting these rivets on, and it just gives the belt that, especially if it's a polished rivet, it just gives it that little bit of flair, I guess. There's little reflection especially in the polished ones, and you have to really slam the rivet together with a tool that I do have. So when I hammer those 2 rivets in, that is like the final piece, the cannon going off in my little workshop, and your belt is complete and send off to shipping.
Well, speaking of final pieces, that's the final piece of this particular episode.
Oh, boy.
Ryan, thank you so much. I've learned so much about belts.
It was really enjoyable having a great discussion about somebody who is interested in talking about belts, and I hope everybody else is interested and learned a little bit as well.
Yeah, enjoy your belts, folks. As always, the Insomnia Project is produced by Drumcast Productions, and this particular episode was recorded in Toronto, Canada. Until next time.